Yesterday, February 15th, 2023, was an unusual day. It was warm in the 60s. So I couldn't snowshoe, couldn't ski. I decided to take my bike up to the Shawangunk Mountains, and I bicycled 35 miles on the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail and on the River to Ridge trail system right there in New Paltz, New York. As I was cycling along, I suddenly had a realization. Oh my gosh, today is Charlie Lorber and Joe Barzyck Day. You're wondering what the heck is Charlie Lorber and Joe Barzyck Day? Well, I'll tell you. 43 years ago, on February 15th. I know it was February 15th because it was 10 days after my little girl, my first child, Katie, was born. My wife, Iris, was having some of her girlfriends over, some of her colleagues that she worked with in Vernon. And it was a meet and greet kind of, meet the baby, the new child. And my job was to make myself scarce. So I decided to go skiing. I went over to what today is Mountain Creek. Back then it was Great Gorge. Now, we had a week off in February. Every single year, the school closed for a week in February. So I went over there, and it wasn't like it was today where you'd have bus loads of people from New York City. No, it was uncrowded. Parking lot was pretty empty when I got there. So I had the whole mountain to myself. And I was skiing up and down and up and down, and I was coming down the mountain at a pretty good clip when suddenly I made a bad turn. Caught the ski tips, and I fell and I tumbled. And as soon as I did, I knew there was a problem. Crack! I felt it in my ankle. Well, I lay in the snow. My one ski came off. I unhooked the other one, and I waited for someone to come down the mountain. And the first skier that came down, I asked him if he would advise the ski patrol that I needed assistance. And then I unzipped the little day pack that I had carried with me, and I ate my peanut butter and jelly sandwich sitting there in the snow waiting. Well, they came with their basket, their litter, as you call it, and the ski patrol tucked me in. They laid me down flat, put a blanket right up to my chin, tied me in. I felt like a mummy. And the skier in front had two poles that connected to that litter basket, and the skier in back, he also had two poles, and they snow plowed me all the way down the mountain. Took me into the first aid room and examined me. Yep, you need an x-ray, probably broken. Got to get to the hospital. How was I going to get to the hospital? I'll drive. Oh, couldn't drive. You see, I had a pickup truck and it had a manual transmission. Oh, that pickup truck. Man, I love that pickup truck. It was a black 1979 Chevy. I bought it new in the summer of 79. Now that old pickup truck, it wasn't like the pickup trucks today. No, those big beasts that come up on your bumper at 85 miles an hour on the interstate. No, those old trucks couldn't do that. They were simple, utilitarian, basically transportation and utility. I used that pickup truck to get back and forth to work at the Wantage School and to haul stuff. I hauled firewood and lumber and a couple of loads of shale before my driveway got paved, and to help people move. If you have a pickup truck, when somebody's moving, they become your best friend. I remember I made a canoe rack, a boat rack, out of 2x4 so that I could slip my canoe right on the top of that Chevy pickup truck. Didn't have a back seat like the pickups today, just two doors, a red vinyl plaid seat, a very simple truck, a 6-cylinder engine, not very powerful. The only luxury that truck had was a push-button AM radio. And like I said, it had a stick shift. So to drive it, you had to manipulate a little bit more than you would with an automatic transmission. You had to push your left foot into to engage the clutch. And then you shifted. There was a lever on your steering column. So shifting first gear was in and down. When you were ready for second gear, you pushed up, away from you, and all the way up. And third gear, you pulled straight down. Reverse was in and up. Well, anyway, I knew that it would be really tricky with a broken ankle to manage that truck to get to the hospital in Sussex. So what should I know? I'll call the school. Oh, absolutely. Bob Coates will be in his classroom. Even though we had the week off, I knew Bob would be in his classroom a bunch of times. Bob was working on a curriculum called T4C, Technology for Children. And back then, what that meant was that he had a wooden workbench in his classroom, and he had hammers and saws and screwdrivers and little hand drills, and he taught the kids how to work with their hands. Yeah, he'll be in his classroom. So I got a phone and I dialed 875-4589. Didn't need to dial the area code back then. And I had that number memorized from 1973 when I started working at the Wantage School. Well, the principal of the school, Dr. Charles Lorber, answered the phone. Oh, Dr. Lorber, this is Ken Carnes. Could you do me a favor and check it and see if Bob's in his classroom? Well, I waited. And Charlie came back on the phone with his low, always calm, somewhat gravelly voice. No, Ken, he's not in. Who's in school today? Anybody else? And I know what you're thinking. Alan Terwilliger, right? Oh, he'll be in his classroom. Alan's always in school. Nope. I knew Alan was not going to be in his classroom because, you see, well, he didn't have a classroom. And the reason I remember this clearly is that because 10 days earlier, on February 5th, when my little Katie was born, I needed a substitute. And my substitute teacher for that day was a college kid named Alan Terwilliger. And the reason I remember that, when I got back to school, I opened my lesson plan book up, and neatly written on that page of lesson plans, in pen, in a beautiful flowing cursive handwriting, was an evaluative comment. Nice plans! Exclamation mark. Yep, so anyway, I was asking Dr. Lorber if anybody else was in school, and he asked me why. So I told him, and he said, Ken, just stay right there. I'll be right over. And in a little while, Charlie Lorber and Joe Barzyck came to my rescue. Now, Joe Barzyck, one of the best guys in the world, one of our custodians, who always had a smile on his lips, friendship in his voice, and two hands willing to help with whatever you needed. He was a real good guy. Well, Joe took my pickup truck and drove it back to the Wantage School where he parked it and went back to work. Charlie drove me to the hospital, Sussex, the Alexander Lynn Hospital in Sussex. And he got me in. I said, oh, thanks, Dr. Lorber. He said, no, I'll stay with you, Ken. And he stayed with me as they x-rayed my foot, and then I was lying in this gurney, and he went down the hall and he bought me a newspaper. Now, back in the day, if you wanted to buy a newspaper in a public place, you went to a little vending machine that had a little door in the front that was glass, and you could see the stack of newspapers inside. And he put his dime in and opened the door and got a New York Times out, closed the door, and it would latch. Well, he brought me the New York Times and said, I've got to leave now, Ken, but if you need me, give me a call. So that's why yesterday will always be for me, Charlie Lorber and Joe Barzyck Day. Now, the ending chapter to this story, I did have a broken ankle, and I was waiting for the doctor to come and cast it up so I can get home to my new baby. I had to help. The nurse informed me, you're not going anywhere today. You've got to stay here overnight, and they're going to cast it tomorrow. Well, no, I can't. I've got to get home. I've got a new baby. I've got to take care of that new baby. No, you are staying here. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. We argued back and forth, and the nurse told me definitively, you are staying here. That leg has to stay immobile. If it's going to swell, and if the swelling is bad tomorrow, we won't even cast it tomorrow. Well, she left, and I thought, I'm sneaking out of this place. I'll grab my clothes, and how am I going to get home? And she's probably right. So I resigned myself to the fact that I would have to stay in that hospital in Sussex, the Alexander Lynn Hospital. Now I had to call my wife and tell her. So I waited a while. I didn't want to ruin her event, her meeting with her girlfriends. And so I waited till mid-afternoon, and I got a phone, and I dialed home. Iris, I'm at the Alexander Lynn Hospital in Sussex. I broke my ankle. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Ken, where are you? Sussex Inn or Fountain Square Inn? No, I'm at the hospital. Ken, now I'm not a guy to drink a lot. I mean, I'll occasionally have a beer or two, and when I do, I can tell a joke or tell a story or pull a prank maybe, but this was no time to tell jokes or tell a prank. I had a baby at home. I'm serious. I haven't been drinking. Who's there with you, Ken? Well, I looked. I called a nurse over. She took the phone, introduced herself, and told her the situation. So I stayed overnight, had that leg cast, and I thought it was going to be a small cast. No, it came up all the way up halfway to my thigh. And I went back home, and I did the best I could taking care of that little baby. I couldn't do much, but I'll burp her. And I sat with my leg up on the couch like this, and I burped that little girl. When it was time for her to take a nap, I sat on the couch and held her and rocked her and sang to her until we both were asleep. And then I went back to school. I didn't miss a day's work. When school started, I went back. And I remember I had to give my crutches to somebody. As I went up those steps, my classroom was on the second floor of the Wantage School, the old section of the school. And I remember grabbing that handrail and going up one step at a time, hopping on my good leg. And I remember I couldn't escort my children to recess or to the lunchroom. I had to get another teacher to supervise. I guess I'm lucky that there was no fire. I had to probably jump out the window. Anyway, it's kind of funny when you get old and you start thinking about those things that happened so many years ago. When I got home yesterday, I raised a glass, and it was full yesterday, and I made a toast. Charlie Lorber, Joe Barzyck, to you. Someday, I hope it's not too soon, but someday we'll meet again, and we'll talk and laugh and reminisce about those good old days. And until then, cheers, shlancha, l'chaim, na zdrovia.